Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I am Mayur and this is the last episode in the series of risk management. In today's episode, we are going to discuss about selection of controls and the associated cost benefit analysis and the various risk treatment options. Well, there's a lot to discuss, so without any delay, let's get started. Now, when a countermeasure is suggested, say for example a firewall, it is not just that the cost that comes on the invoice. A company needs to budget for training costs for the new device, hire new people if required for the task, or with specialized skill set, cater to any subscriptions, costs if any there are, and testing it before rolling out, which requires time and effort, and train and communicate the change to everyone in the organization if required. See, an annual maintenance cost also needs to be budgeted in addition to any repair or replacement costs. Hence, selection of a control has to have to really look at the cost versus benefits, else it will not be worthwhile investment for an organization. See, you need to understand and appreciate the fact that it is not just that value that comes on the invoice, but a lot of other costs are involved where the countermeasure is suggested or implemented. Now, next comes to the selection of control. See, post detailed deliberations, the IRM team suggests that we need to have a fire suppression system for the data center. Now, as a security professional, one should not simply go ahead with the control selection. A detailed discussion with the finance team is recommended. See, every business is operating to make a profit. At the same point of time, it needs to cater to risks that are posed, but it cannot go overboard with it. In simple terms, you do not put $1,000 lock to protect $100 bicycle. And similarly, we need to calculate the value of the control by using the formula here. If the value is positive, it means it makes sense to proceed forward. If the value is negative, that means that the cost outweigh the benefits and we need to think of compensating controls. This is a sample question, focus of which is to showcase to you whether it makes sense to implement controls suggested by the team. Let's try to understand this. QWERTY Bank's new digital platform has increased its market share by 27% and now contributes around 40% to overall revenues. A new IPS with a next-gen cloud antivirus solution has been suggested by the security team. Now, without such measures, the finance team budgets around $100,000 every year for a data breach. These control measures will cost around $65,000 to procure, along with other costs annually. Post this, the yearly will get reduced by 30%. Now the question is, should the team go ahead with control selection? Now let's try to find out. Now yearly before the safeguard is $100,000. Yearly after applying the safeguard is around $70,000, that is as a 30% reduction as mandated above. Cost of the control is around $65,000. Now value of the control or countermeasure, that is yearly before implementing the control, minus the yearly after implementing it minus the annual cost of the control. So the value of the control comes out to be around minus $35,000. Now this is a common scenario that may come to a security professional in some form or the other. Now post applying the formula that we have understood earlier, we find that it's actually not a cost effective countermeasures. So what happens after this? See, the IRM team can suggest a counter compensating control such as old gen antivirus, which could cost quite less with a software based IPS. Or the company may think of accepting the risk associated with this and the budget the same cost as it has been doing so. See, once we have identified the risk and zeroed down on the countermeasures, it's time to treat the risk. This is also known as handling risk or risk treatment. There are four ways to treat a risk: reduce or mitigate the risk, transfer, accept, and avoid. Let's understand in detail. I'll first of all also give you certain examples here. Now, reduce or mitigate the risk. The countermeasures that you have selected are a way to reduce the risk. It's bringing the overall annual loss expectancy down. The second one is transfer the risk. You feel that the risk cannot be managed and hence you transfer it to a third party who will take care of it. You decide to buy a fire insurance for your organization and hence transfer the risk arising out of the damage due to fire to them. It has become a commonplace to buy cyber insurance nowadays. Now this helps to mitigate costs in case of a data breach. An important point to note is that you can transfer the risk to a third party. It doesn't take care of the losses such as a reputation loss. See, the next one is an easy one. Avoid the risk altogether. Oh, don't be confused. This does not mean that you close your eyes and do nothing about it. Avoidance of risk means stopping the activity altogether that's causing the risk. For example, if you have a web server that you have set up for an online presence which may pose risk, you decide to close the website itself. Not an ideal way, but organizations do exercise this option in some cases. The final case is to accept the risk. Means that the company understands the level of risk it is faced with, as well as the potential cost of damage, and decides to just live with it and not implement the countermeasures. Many companies will accept the risk when the cost benefit analysis ratio indicates that the cost of the countermeasure outweighs the potential loss value. Practically, many business teams just accept the risk blindly. A diligent organization will question every risk acceptance, and that is the best approach for risk acceptance. Before the beginning of this exercise, the risk that was faced by the organization would be the total risk. Basically, that includes all threats and vulnerabilities that were identified. Post acting on the risks found, that means applying countermeasures, the risk gets reduced. This, however, does not mean under any circumstances that you have reduced it to zero. Risk can never be reduced to zero. I will repeat it again. Risk can never be zero. As a security professional, you should understand and appreciate this. Residual risk is hence the risk that remains after applying a countermeasures. Consider this: you apply locks in your home to reduce the risk of threat, but that does not mean that the risk goes away totally. A thief can be creative and may be able to unlock all the doors and take away your belongings, just like money heist. Well, it may sound repetitive, but the best exam or the interview tip would be that the risk can never be zero. At the same point of time, the cost benefit analysis involves calculations which you must practice. You can always check out my blog for more such stuff. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it across. You can also check out my sample exams on SSCP and CISSP on Udemy or Simpliv if you are preparing for the same. The mock exams have a lot of such questions that you can, cover such scenarios. Thank you guys for watching this episode, and I hope to see you in my next one.